Are we good?
We're rolling.
Can you see from there? Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right, so this is 1.2. There's a frog. Wouldn't that be a good meal for a bird? You know how most frogs protect themselves? They're poisonous. If you eat them, you get sick. So if you're ever out there starving somewhere and you want to eat a frog, you might get sick. They also have good camouflage. Somebody said that too. This one obviously has good camouflage. You can blend in. Some of the most potent poisons in the world are from frogs. Did y'all know that? Have you ever heard of frog licking? You can lick a frog, some types of frogs, and they naturally make acid. Like, have you ever heard of LSD? You know? That's a chemical that's in high doses will kill you, but in low doses, you like seeing things and craziness. So frog licking was big back when I was y'all's age.
Actually?
You had to have the right kind of frog though, but you'd lick it.
Did they live here?
I don't think so. It was in other countries. You can probably Google frog licking and learn all that.
Okay.
And then there was also poison dart frogs. Have you ever heard of them?
Yes.
The Indians would wipe their arrows on the back of these frogs, and if you shot an animal with the arrow, it'd kill it because of the poison on the frog.
Just contact with the frog? If there's enough that's on its skin?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, it would have to penetrate your skin.
Right, but just it's not poisoned on the skin of the frog?
Yeah, they just wipe it on the frog.
That's unbelievable.
Isn't that amazing?
What if they ate where they stacked it?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how that works. Maybe they cooked it. Cooking denatures and destroys the poison. Anyway, so this picture is talking about order is important in biology. The frog is made up of cells, which are organized into tissues. Tissues are organized into organs. Organs are organized into systems. And you put all the systems together, you get the individual frog. So a frog has a nervous system, a muscular system, a reproductive system. All the systems just like we have. Frogs are going extinct, by the way, pretty quickly. Do you know why?
Loss of habitat.
Yeah, everything from loss of habitat, that's one. But frogs are very pollution sensitive. Yeah, they breathe, good Josie, they breathe through their skin. Half of the air, or maybe like 30% of the air, the oxygen they get, has to come through their skin. They don't have very big lungs. And so they have real thin skin so they can absorb oxygen. Well, the pollution goes right through their skin too. And so it might not kill them outright, but it makes them not as healthy, and they don't reproduce as well as they're able to, and they just don't live as easily, and that could be a death sentence in nature.
Don't insects also breathe in through the skin though?
They do, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they're a little hardier than the frog.
Does that also mean that like back in the day when there was a lot more oxygen in the atmosphere, frogs were way bigger, like insects?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they were more active too.
Maybe frogs have dogs.
Or they could have had thicker skin. That could have been it. So this is the mimosa plant, and so this slide is saying living things have order to them. This slide is saying living things are sensitive and can respond to stimuli. So you touch the mimosa plant, and its leaves close. I think I have a good video of that a student sent me. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh yeah, here it is.
Empire property. Did you know that after the slaves, this church
Somebody's explaining something to her and she's not listening. She's playing with the emotion.
was empire property? Did you know that after the slaves, this church was built by slaves? So after the slaves, they finished building this church.
Isn't that cool?
Where is she?
I don't know where she was when it sent that to me. I don't think it was in the U.S. I think it was South America or someplace. So living things all can respond to stimuli. So if I were to make a loud noise, you might respond to it. Ah! It worked yesterday with the orange. So, of course, dead things don't respond to stimuli. So, if you make a loud noise, you know, a chair is not going to jump because it's not living. So, that's one way we tell living things from non-living things. All living things can reproduce. All living things can grow and develop. So the cat has kittens. The cat has reproduced. The kittens will grow and develop and eventually become adults. That's something you see living things doing. Now this is something that viruses can do. You know, viruses are kind of on the border between living and non-living. So viruses can reproduce. What they don't do is they don't grow and develop. Once they're made, they don't get bigger. They just kind of stay the same way they are. So we don't consider viruses to be alive. Viruses also don't respond to stimuli. They don't do much. They just kind of sit there. Viruses do have some order to them. Here's another one. Living things regulate their bodies. A word you need to know is homeostasis. Living things maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis means constant conditions. What is something in your body that you keep constant? Temperature. pH of your blood. What else? There's hundreds of things. What else do you keep constant in your body? What's that? Blood flow. Actually, the amount of blood flow changes at times.
Hair growth.
Hair growth. Pretty constant. I was thinking on the lines of
Blood sugar.
blood sugar. That's a good one. What's that?
The cells multiplying.
Cell multiplication, but that's not keeping it constant.
Temperature.
That's increasing the number of cells.
Temperature.
Your body temperature.
Iron level.
What's that?
Iron. Level iron.
Amount of iron in your body.
Blood pressure.
Your blood pressure needs to be. Amount of oxygen. Amount of water. Amount of salts. Amount of sugars. Hormone levels. All this stuff is kept constant. That's a whole bunch of stuff that your body has to check on. Talk about amount of sugar in your blood. If blood sugar gets low, your liver will release sugar into your blood. If the blood sugar is too high, your liver will absorb sugar from the blood. And so your liver helps keep your blood sugar constant. And there's hormones that regulate that. Do you know what one of the hormones is that regulates blood sugar?
Insulin.
Yes! Do it, Cartier. There's another one that regulates blood sugar other than insulin. Y'all remember that from regular bio? Starts with a G. Glucagon. Insulin lowers the blood sugar. Glucagon raises the blood sugar.
Glycine. Is that a word?
What's that?
Glycine.
Glycine?
Glycine something.
Hyperglycemic?
Oh.
Hypoglycemic? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
That has to do with sugar. Energy processing. Living things have to take in molecules, break them apart, and get energy out of them. Anytime you break apart a molecule, you get energy released from the bonds. And this is something important that you really have to get your mind wrapped around. If I have a molecule, here's one of your favorite molecules. You know what that is? Y'all love this molecule.
Sugar.
Yep. It's ethanol. It's the alcohol that's in alcoholic beverages. It makes you a little loopy if you drink too much of it. This can be used for energy. How do cells do it? They take the molecule and they break these bonds. That's one of the first ones that's broken, that one. It separates it into two molecules. And then other bonds will be broken. And anytime you break a bond, energy is released. It takes energy to put together a bond, and when you break a bond, it releases energy. So can you get energy from alcohol? You can. As a matter of fact, they often use it to fuel vehicles. Yeah, if you ran out of gas and had some alcohol, it was strong enough, you could pour it in your gas tank and run your engine for a little bit. It burns hotter than gasoline though, so it'd probably ruin your engine.
So is it? So like alcohol is very flammable. So is sugar. Is it also? Is it?
Yeah, sugar is flammable if you powder it.
Stuff that you can burn for energy that is actually physically flammable.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything that's flammable, you can probably burn it for energy too. Now, your body has to be able to process it, and you can take in something like you wouldn't want to drink gasoline. It's poisonous the way it comes in, but it's just carbon atoms attached. The gasoline that's in your car is octane. Have you ever heard of a high octane gasoline? Octane has 8 carbons and a bunch of hydrogens connected to it. If I just drew hydrogens all along. So it's the same thing. What the car is doing when it burns gasoline, it's just breaking these bonds, and energy is released, and it's enough energy to push those pistons in an explosion. You put oxygen with it, you gotta put oxygen with it. What's that? Diesel is just takes the gasoline and puts it under high enough pressure where it will combust. It's a little bit different way the engine works. Diesel fuel is not as refined as the gasoline you put in the car. So yeah, it's the same thing. The car gets energy from these molecules. Your body gets energy from these molecules. So you just need more molecules to do things. And that's what living things do. It's called energy processing. Like I said, you can get energy from breaking apart molecules. If you want to put molecules together, that requires energy. And cells can do this too. Cells can take energy, usually from a molecule called ATP, and use it to put molecules together and make bigger molecules. Here's a molecule, DNA, that stores information. And every cell in your body has a copy of the DNA genome. DNA is a huge molecule. We'll learn more about DNA. So this shows the levels of organizations. I mentioned them yesterday. this has it starting with cells or organelles, but you can get even smaller than organelles. You can start with atoms and go to molecules, then go to macromolecules, then organelles. The organelles come together to make cells. Cells come together to make tissues. Tissues can come together to make organs. Organs come together to make organ systems. And then you have organisms. Put a bunch of organisms together, you got populations. Put a bunch of populations together, you got communities. Put a bunch of communities together, you got an ecosystem. Put a bunch of ecosystems together, you have the biosphere. All the living things on the whole planet. So our next step is putting a bunch of biospheres together. So we have to discover life on other planets to do that. I'm going to leave that up to y'all. We're probably not going to do it. It's looking like. But hopefully it'll be done soon. Now, you got to get used to looking at these evolutionary trees. Here is a tree of life. And all life, we think, started with a single cell, probably, that likely formed in the oceans, we think, maybe around 4 billion years ago, when the Earth was still young. Now, how did that cell form? We don't really know. Very likely it formed by what we call chemical evolution. And I'll spend time going over that pretty soon here. Chemicals like carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia, water, when they're hot, they'll slam together and stick together and become more and more complicated and diverse. And so, scientists have some evidence by doing experiments and seeing that happen in test tubes and in the lab that it can get more and more complicated and eventually start forming things that look like cells. So we think maybe that happened in the oceans 4 billion years ago. However it happened, this single cell, which we call the Universal Common Ancestor, UCA, Universal Common Ancestor. That means it was the ancestor to everything. We think that those first cells multiplied and diversified and, floated around in the ocean, and some ended up in cold environments, and some ended up in warm environments, and some ended up in a dry area, washed up on the shore somewhere, and some ended up in, cracks in the rocks. So there's all these different locations where these cells ended up, and they evolved. They changed to be able to live more easily in wherever areas they came. And so that's what this branching is that you see. In an evolutionary tree, wherever you see a branch, that signifies a change, a new species. And so you have different types of bacteria that evolved from that universal common ancestor, different types of archaeans that evolved, and different types of eukaryotes that evolved. Now, I don't know how well you remember this from regular bio, but bacteria and archaea, they're all prokaryotes. They're simple cells. They don't have a nucleus. They're really small. You could fit several million of them on the tip of your pen. They're the things that cause disease and infection. food poisoning and such. Those are bacteria. Archaea are a little bit more rare than bacteria. You can find archaea in weird places like hot springs and acidic pools and things like that. And then the eukarya, though, those are much more complex. They're much bigger cells. They have nuclei. And some of them evolved to be multicellular. And that's what we see here with the plants and the fungi and the animals and even the slime molds to some extent. Those are multicellular, much larger creatures made of many cells, not just one cell. And that's what we are. But what the cool thing is about these trees is that even though we're so much bigger than a bacterium, we share a common ancestor with them. We're actually very alike with bacteria in many ways. We have DNA as our information molecule. We have cell membranes and enzymes and ribosomes and all these different cellular molecules that are very similar. So we're going to spend a lot of time on phylogenetic trees and evolution. Isn't that great? So these are the different domains. There's domain bacteria, domain archaea, domain eukarya. Does anyone remember the hierarchy of organization as far as taxonomy goes? Domain is at the top. What's next? Raise your hand if you think you can remember that. We learned it in regular bio. Domain. Yes.
It's like family.
Oh, family's in there.
Kingdom.
Kingdom is next.
Family.
Domain, kingdom.
Class.
Class is down there. It's not next though. What's that? Phylum. Domain, kingdom, phylum.
Order.
Order's here.
Species?
Class.
Oh.
Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order.
Species?
Species is here. Family. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, or specific epithet. Did King Philip come over from Germany slowly? Y'all remember that? That's how to remember. Look at this phylogenetic tree for mammals. So these are all these major groups of mammals. And when you're looking at a phylogenetic tree like this, they're likely talking about one of these bigger categories. You know, like this category here, all of these organisms are rodent-type mammals, and that's its own order. So this is an order here, and this is an order here, and there's an order. So we're going to learn taxonomy too. You're going to have to get a good grasp of that. You're going to learn how to make these trees. We'll do plenty of lab work in here. We'll do a DNA extraction. We'll run them through gels. We'll transform bacteria so that using DNA, we'll insert some DNA into some bacteria to allow them to live on a poisonous environment. You're going to do some genetic engineering in here. We'll have a good time. This shows some guys digging up some bones. A lot of what we know from the history of the earth and a lot of this taxonomy comes from evidence from the past. You can see it in the DNA. You can see it in the way the bones change over time. You can check your answers. Okay, so that was basically 1.2. I don't go over when I'm discussing stuff in class and looking at these pictures and such. I don't go over everything. There's just not enough time. So you got to make sure to read. There could be another quiz over 1.2 tomorrow. The quizzes are kind of hit and miss. If I feel like giving one, I'll give one. If not, no. I might have 4 in a row and then go 3 days without one. Or I might have it every other day. You just never know. Okay? I usually drop the lowest quiz when it comes time to put in grades. I don't put in grades every day. I put them in usually after after each test. Take a test, then I'll go in and put it in all the grades. It's just easier that way. Did you stop them? You can go.